I saw Chappaquiddick, and I'm gonna let you know right now if it's worth seeing. It stars Jason Clarke, Ed Helms, Kate Mara, and Jim Gaffigan. Chappaquiddick tells the story of the summer of 1969 where Ted Kennedy is involved in a fatal car crash with Mary Jo Kopechne. They're driving along and the car goes off of a bridge upside down in a large pond estuary type of body of water. Only Ted makes it out alive. So Chappaquiddick tells this story and goes through all of the maneuvers and what happens in the days following this terrible tragedy. In this, I think the acting is really solid. Jason Clarke did an amazing job. He is playing Ted Kennedy, and he just disappeared into the role. He has some prosthetics on his teeth, or maybe it's just the way he's holding his mouth, which makes him look even more like Ted Kennedy. Now, Ted is the youngest of 4 sons of the Kennedy clan, and Jason Clarke plays him as the baby of that family, or at least the baby boy. You can see him sway between what he wants to do and trying to please his father. Now, pleasing his father doesn't necessarily mean doing the right thing. And so you see this conflict that happens, and he acts kind of childish, maybe. I mean, you see this as like the baby of the family, and him just kind of almost tantruming in little bits. And it's really this inner conflict that he has of him wanting to do what's right, wanting to please his dad, trying to find that middle spot, and then really not accomplishing either of them because which is going to win out. This is probably the first film that I've actually liked Ed Helms in. I'm not a huge fan of his. I wasn't really a fan of him on The Office either. But in Chappaquiddick, Ed Helms really does a great job. Now, he is a lawyer who's also related somehow to the Kennedys, and he's really been adopted in as a son to the Kennedys. You see him struggle with honor or loyalty to the family, and that conflict that ensues within those. Bruce Dern plays Joe Kennedy Sr., and golly, I didn't even know Bruce Dern was still alive, and that's not a cut at him. I mean, he's just an old guy. He's great in the stuff that he's in, but wow, I didn't realize this. And Joe Kennedy Sr., at this point in history, has suffered at least one stroke. He's suffering from dysphagia where he can't really speak, but he has a lot of his capabilities, kind of, but he can't move it all around a lot. So Bruce Dern spends much of the film that you see him in this really weird contorted position. It had to have been tough on his face to keep this up for a long period of time because he would almost stick like that because he's got his mouth all screwed up like this and his hands are curved in and they're shaking the whole time. And wow, I mean, the dedication to continue that while you're on camera, I mean, that was painful, that 3 seconds that I was just doing that on. So I can't imagine what it was like for him doing it minutes and minutes. Joe Sr.'s not a nice guy. You don't like him. And so Bruce Dern really portrays that too, that you don't like him as a character. And you kind of wonder, why does Ted Kennedy keep going back to him? Why does he listen to his dad if he's not treated well? Well, and that's the family dilemma right there, right? I like the historical setting as well. The cars, the look, the clothing, the news reports, all of this that's centered around 1969 feels really right at home. I think the filmmakers pulled that off really well in conveying this time period. Now, something that I liked and didn't like all at the same time was the story. It's a true story, but we only have bits of facts because realistically, there's only 2 people in the world that really know what happened, and one of them died that night. So all we're left with is Ted Kennedy's story and his recollection of it. Now, as the film goes on, Ted Kennedy, because he's pulled in different directions by lawyers and lobbyists and PR people and his father and just everything, his story changes a little bit, or at least his recollection does. We're shown these flashbacks of what happened, and they don't totally mesh together. And we're left wondering, is that because he's now seeing this as the new twist on the story is happening, or is he really confused, or what is real? Now, I know that there wouldn't be hard and fast answers, but you think 49 years later, after this tragedy has occurred, that maybe some investigative journalism has taken place. Somebody diving in just a little bit more to maybe get a few more answers. The filmmakers don't really tell this. They tell what we know, maybe at least at the time of 1969. And they're displaying the facts. And there's no knock to displaying what was going on. It just leaves me as a viewer a little bit frustrated and kind of confused. The filmmakers also didn't fill in a lot of the gaps with the information. Now, they assumed that everybody in the audience knows all of the players in this. And so you would hear names being referenced. And for me, I'm not a history buff. I didn't really understand who they were talking about. And so I'm assuming that, oh, well, this person is this. And then all of a sudden, no, they're not. Well, gosh, okay, so I've spent this time thinking that they were that person and now they're this person, and I'm really confused. So I wish that they would have done more to really educate the viewers on who they're talking about, so that we have a full frame of reference of what's going on in the story. Now, I didn't like the music, or at least some of it, and the way they used it. It's not that the soundtrack was bad. The score was great, and it was good to listen to. The problem became, though, is that they would ramp up the score as dialogue would happen, and then the actor would go into some contemplative look. And it was meant to display, I don't know, some emotion or sadness or whatever it was. But what happened is it would then, the dialogue that was happening in the background would drown out, the music would take over, it would sit on this scene for 3 to 5 seconds, and then we'd go to a new scene. Now, that in and of itself is not bad. That's a good way to tell part of the story or to convey some emotion, if it's done sparingly. This was done more than a handful of times throughout the film, and so really it became a crutch to the filmmaking itself. And I think it maybe just, they didn't have the dialogue, or they were lazy with the dialogue, or whatever it was, and so they just, oh, we're just gonna do this again. And they did that, and it got tiring, and it was noticeable. That's probably the biggest thing that bothered me, is that I noticed that it was happening over and over again. Overall, the story is good. The acting is superb. The music is, it's okay. And while I'm glad I saw this, it's not something that I'm ever gonna watch again. And I'm not sure I would recommend it to anybody who's not really a history buff, and then you may have to do some research afterwards just to get the full picture. Not that great of a movie for me. Maybe you enjoy history, and there you go. There's no sex and no nudity, there's very little violence, and there is some language. Other than that, though, it's fairly family friendly. I'm gonna give Chappaquiddick 2.5 out of 5 couches. Did you see it? What'd you think? Please share your comments below. Don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed this, and don't forget to subscribe as well. Also, if you are a subscriber, please hit that bell icon so that you're notified anytime I post something new. I'm Chris, this is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.